best way to bring justice to our people is to look beyond a lot of the religious programming, which ironically is designed to create a attitude that allows you to be oppressed. For example, a lot of my lectures, I'm very fond of talking about the messages that are so compatible with slavery that come from religion. Let me give you a few of them. When people say things like pie in the sky after you die, I always say that you're going to get pie in the sky after you die because you're not going to get anything on earth. They say the meek shall inherit the earth. Yes, you will inherit the earth because you will get your 6 feet under for being so meek in the face of white supremacy. You know, pray for those who despitefully use you. That's praying for white folks. You know what I mean? Turn the other cheek, let them slap them in the other. All of these messages are designed to help your mind cope with exploitation. And the people that seem to be giving you this message, you know, are the people that really don't believe this message. I mean, if we go back into history, we know that I would venture to say none of us came over on the slave ships as people who were involved in Christianity. Now, why that is significant is that, you know, there was a massive, we were never really Christians in this country until the 1800s. And I'm not trying to focus on Christianity. I happen to have the same attitude about most of religions that, you know, it's just a very sophisticated form of mind control. And that does not believe, you know, and this is one of the most difficult things for our people to understand. That because you talk about religion does not believe you do not, does not mean that you do not believe in the Creator. And it does not mean you don't acknowledge the beneficial aspects of religion. But it's important that we look at some of the details because we're getting hurt by some of the details. For example, I always like to tell people who are involved in Christianity that, you know, white people view Christianity in a much different way than African people do. The founder of the religion of Christianity is a guy by the name of Constantine. Now people will say, oh, it's Jesus Christ. But no, it's not. Constantine, who signs his name in the Bible, and I'm going to show you how he does it. Constantine signs his name in the Bible. He has his Council of Nicaea in 325 AD, where he decides to commission all the people that's supposed to know about religion. And he combines some of the best ideas in Mithraism, the cult of Isis, the teachings of the so-called teachings of Jesus Christ, you know, and his own cult that he had, because Caesar worshipped himself as a god. Now, according to Christian theology or Catholic theology, Constantine is supposed to have made a deathbed conversion to the religion that he created. He had 29 different books of the life of Jesus Christ. He chose 4 books, the Synoptic Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And interestingly enough, when you start to analyze that, you can see how these books have been altered to favor the sustaining of his empire. And I'll just give you a couple of verses just to show you. In the Bible, in the New Testament, Jesus says, no slave can serve 2 masters. Now, later on in the Bible, when the question is asked about taxes, he says, render unto Caesar what is due Caesar. Now, this I have a serious problem with simply because here you have a religious leader endorsing the state. Now, I have a problem with the state endorsing religious leaders. For example, when you see, you know, this is our church incorporated, what you're saying is that you're in partnership with the government. Because, let's face it, our religious institutions you would think would be ordained and enjoy their authority to do what they do from the Creator himself without a connection to the government. The connection to the government is dangerous because a lot of times the government itself is the #1 opposition to the Creator. So from a black standpoint, if you are an African slave in America and you're reading the Bible and it says render unto Caesar, and it happens to be a time when slavery is legal in this country, and your mind to be a slave is to serve God. And this is why it is dangerous to have the hypocritical concept that your religious icon can be saying, on the one hand, no slave can serve two masters, and your slavery should be to God. And then at the same time, it says render unto Caesar. Now you got the person in a confused situation. So these are the kind of hypocritical messages. The root of money, money is the root of all evil. When in fact, the lack of money is the root of all evil. It's not the love of money that's the root of all evil either. You know? I mean, when you see people out there prostituting themselves, selling drugs, it's not because they got too much money. You know what I mean? It's because they don't have money. So, you know, it's been said that poverty is actually the worst form of violence against the people. And which, you know, is part of it. You know, I think the destruction of their culture. You know, we had a great psychologist in the 80s who unfortunately passed away, but he left us with a great legacy of information. I mean, we had so many greats, people like Amos Wilson. All black people should know Amos Wilson and the great work that he's done. Another brother by the name of Bobby Wright used to talk about menticide and the destruction of a group's mind. And that's a lot of stuff that we're witnessing right now. When it comes down to white supremacy, like I said, there's not much we can do to stop it because it involves engaging somebody else. If you're boxing, I can't make the guy stop punching me in my face. But what I can do is I can prepare myself so I can do something. And the key is that I think the current mental state of our people is that, you know, we're not going to kill anything, we're not going to let anything die, we're not going to get out there and, you know, we have no real military solution at this point, but there is something that we can do to counter the racism that has been used to control us and to limit our development as a people, and that is that we must set up a system of cooperation. According to Mr. Fuller, we must set up a system of black cooperation because he theorizes, and I think he does this correctly, that white supremacy has made us such haters of self and kind.
Thank you.
That, you know, that's why I have to write books like Toward the Destruction of a Nigger Mentality, Get the Cure for the Social Sicknesses Killing Black People. And, you know, it's interesting, in writing that book, I realized that the reason why the self-hatred is so great is that because we're doing something that no other group of people on the planet does, or we are failing to do something that every group does, and that is engage in nation building. When you have a group of people that are not engaged in nation building, of course they're going to have contempt for themselves, because every other group of people, all the men in their group know that their fellow man who is a Jew or their fellow man who is an Italian or any Japanese, whoever you are, your brother is your best protection against oppression. And he is duty bound to assist you and aid you in making progress in life. But they have black people, African men, this concept of individualism, which really doesn't work. The strength of a people is in their interdependence. It's not in their independence. Yeah. My trying to assert my independence from you is not beneficial to us collectively, because I know we're stronger together than divided. So when you see incidents of police shootings, you know, I remember sitting in my living room in Florida at the time, reading in a horrified way about the abuse that Abner Louima experienced. I said, wow, you know, you're taught in these schools as a kid that the policeman is your friend, and here's some guy being sodomized by a police officer with a stick in some bathroom. But what was really horrific was the reaction of black men. I sat there and said to myself, there has to be at least a million black men in the town. Where are they? Because this is an affront to every last one of them. And the idea that the police could do this and there's not at least 50,000, 100,000, 75,000 at the precinct where this occurred is mind-boggling. Because you are basically sending a message that we are so individual that we don't recognize that this affront was an affront to all of us. You know, the same thing when you see these police shootings. You know, I said, well, maybe they got so many felonies, or they're just terrified of the system, or they've just been conned into this concept of individualism that they can't get it together. I was at a homeless shelter and I was explaining to them guys that, you know, our level of tolerance is unbelievable because we will allow 2,000 men to be in a homeless shelter, and none of them seem to realize that they need to get together and go down to Gracie Mansion or go down to City Hall and let these people know that they're not going to tolerate this stuff as white men would do. So I think it's important that we begin to talk about it, and we begin to talk about what we can do to resolve white supremacy. And the primary thing that we can do to resolve it is to make sure that anytime we come in contact with one another as African people, that our conversation and our actions always be constructive. We must create a culture that is beneficial to us, based on the fact that we recognize that we can end our exploitation, or at least limit it, by making sure that all our doings, our comings and goings, our interactions with each other are based on the principle that we must be constructive. So if I'm not feeling constructive, you'll see me walk straight and I won't come nowhere near you, because it's not going to be beneficial.
Right.
If we just were constructive in everything that we did, you know, I think that we'd have an excellent opportunity to begin to start turning things around.
Okay, I learned so much about Black history just listening to you, and I know the audience did too, because our parents did not teach us Black history. Right. And I wasn't taught to go do research. I had to get on this path to start really learning and doing research, listening to John Henry Clark, Amos Wilson, and a lot of the other ones that you were speaking of. But we're going to finish part one,